All right, welcome back to the final round here on Yahoo Finance. Miles Udland with you in New York. We're joined now by Chris Konstantinos. He's the Chief Market Strategist at Riverfront Investment Group. And Chris, going into the break, characterized you as bullish, but you say that basically you're encouraged by what you've seen from the Fed. You increase some exposure. I guess in this environment, not being discouraged counts as bullish. How do you see the environment? How do you see your stance, I guess, given everything that's happened?
Sure. And Miles, thanks for having me. Yeah, to say we're bullish, that's probably a little bit of a stretch. We're less cautious than we were maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. Our portfolios were positioned, as you know, like the last time I was on the show, we were very cautious. We had taken a lot of risk out of our portfolios. And over the last 3 or 4 weeks, the message of markets had suggested, and our tools suggested, that we add a little bit of risk back. We've been very targeted in how we've done that. And I can go into that if you like. But nonetheless, we now sit at somewhere within spitting distance of what I'd call neutral. So neither bearish nor bullish. And again, that is a positive change from where we were a month ago. But we're trying to be relatively careful because, as a lot of your other guests on the show have discussed, the visibility into fundamentals is as low as I've ever seen it in my career, maybe lower. And that's why having, in this environment, I always say process over prediction, right? So, and a big part of our process is listening to the message of markets, being disciplined about taking risk out when those processes suggest it, putting risk back on when those processes suggest it as well. And right now, between our fundamental and our technical read, we're dead neutral, essentially.
And so you mentioned that, prediction is such a difficult task in this environment, but maybe looking backwards at economic data or company commentary, what are the things that you're looking at as guideposts for, maybe not giving us a sense of where we're headed, but more definitively, I think painting the picture of what happened in the last 6 weeks is a task in its own right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you asked this. I think this is really important. So everybody looks at earnings estimates, and we're no different. But the truth is that trying to hang a multiple on an earnings estimate right now is, I think it's kind of a fool's game, because the estimate is going to move all over the place. We had something like 200 companies suspend guidance. So, again, kind of a fool's errand. The data that we're watching really closely relates mostly to the health situation and then the fiscal and monetary stimulus response. Because these are things that we can quantify, and these are things that we believe from a tactical perspective are driving markets. So just to give you an example, looking at the change in the rate of change of viral incidents, which we get this data daily. We can do it on a per country basis, and this is something that we're focused on. For your watchers who are wondering why did the market rip so hard, starting in late March, that was the time when the change in the rate of change of viral incidents in places like Spain, Italy, the UK, and a little bit later on the United States all started to flatten out and started to decrease. And, and I've said before, this isn't a financial crisis like 2008 or even like 1929. This is a health crisis that happens to have deep financial ramifications, but there is a distinction. So while earnings can drive things in the near term, or guidance from management teams, it's really, I think the core of it is about what's happening in the core of the health situation. So that is, are we able to manage the virus in absence of some sort of treatment? Obviously a vaccine is really far away, but in terms of, in the absence of even an effective antiviral, does society have anything we can do to try to get that N naught to drop? We found that we do. It's called extreme social distancing, and it works.
But Chris, we're changing right now. I mean, right, that we saw those numbers in March change, but that's when sheltering in place really happened. So that we are reopening without having a medical answer to a medical problem. How do investors, do you think, need to think about that?
Sure. Well, you bring up an excellent point. So just because that the change in the rate of change has turned for the better doesn't mean that we can't have a second wave. One, we don't know a lot about the virus. And two, past pandemics have oftentimes experienced a second wave or even a third wave, like 1918. So we know all of that is absolutely a possibility. But we're not going to know until we get there. So we have to hopefully be smart about how the economy gets reopened. And I kind of think of it, a quote I heard once was like, it's going to open like an accordion, meaning that we're going to flex into places where viral incidence appears to be less of a problem. And in the areas where it's inevitably going to start popping back up, we're going to have to shut those back down. I think, to me, I'm no health expert, but to me, that seems like the most sensible way, sort of move forward in a very incremental way. I'm definitely one of those people that believes that China is not necessarily a great analog for what we can expect here in the West. But if you look at the Chinese economy right now, depending on what you're looking at, it's somewhere between 40 and maybe 70% back online. And I think as we head out into the summer, that's probably more or less going to be where the US economy is. And we're just going to have to take it day by day. And that's why I'm saying, and I say this in the most humble way possible, as someone who, gets paid to try to predict the future. In the best of times, it's really hard to predict the future. In these kind of times, it's near impossible. So you have to rely more on unemotional, objective indicators. And I think, frankly, technical analysis is really useful for risk management in these types of markets.
Chris, when you talk about the piecemeal approach to reopening that we're seeing across the country, earlier I spoke to an investment strategist who was specifically saying how we need a larger macro perspective, that doing it piecemeal like this doesn't necessarily work because our state borders are very porous, right? If you think about even these municipalities and counties and states, oftentimes people are doing interstate business or trying to travel to another state in order to get new customers. How do you anticipate this really factoring into the reopening and how businesses are going to be able to survive?
Well, I think you bring up a good point, and it obviously increases the uncertainty. And as someone who's an executive at a small company myself, these are all, things that we're dealing with too, and trying to understand it. And we're certainly going to err on the side of caution. We're in an intellectual property business, so the only assets we have are the brains of our employees. Our number one task is to keep them healthy. So obviously this means the uncertainty is going to remain for a really long time. But at the end of the day, to keep the economy completely shut off, it has a sort of an exponential negative effect. I mean, we're already staring at, in my view, we probably on the ground have 20% plus unemployment today. And some of the estimates I've seen, it could get, significantly worse than that. And that leads to a whole bunch of concomitant issues as well. So I think it's kind of an and world. I think we have to be flexible in terms of, if we do start to see things pop back up, we have to be quick to engage in the one thing right now that we know actually works, which is social distancing and being disciplined about that. But I don't think we can just completely stay in place for the foreseeable future until we get more clarity, because that clarity is likely not to be with us for quite some time.
All right, Chris Konstantinos, the Chief Market Strategist at Riverfront Investment Group. Always great to get your thoughts. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.